Hello and welcome to the Top Agent Podcast. My name is Costa and I chat with top real estate agents to discuss their successes, tips, and marketing strategies. This podcast series is brought to you by Web for Realty, the leading provider in real estate marketing tools to grow your business. If you're looking to attract leads, build relationships, and close more deals, go to webforrealty.com to learn more. Before I introduce this next guest, I would encourage you to grab a notebook and a pen or pull up your iPad, whatever you do to take notes, because there's so many tips and actionable advice that you're going to want to remember and learn in this episode. So just don't say I didn't warn you. I'm speaking with Jim Remley, a nationally recognized expert in the field of real estate. Jim dropped out of college and entered real estate at the age of 19. He immediately became a real estate pro by becoming ranked in the top 1% of realtors nationwide in the U.S. Jim shattered sales records by listing over 150 properties in one 12-month period. At the age of 24, he opened his first real estate company and grew the company to 17 offices, becoming the largest independent real estate company in the state of Oregon. Jim is also a sought-after instructor for the National Association of REALTORS, as well as the co-founder of the Luxury Home Council. He's the author of 3 best-selling books, including Sell Your Home in Any Market. Jim has appeared on a number of television and radio programs, and has even been interviewed on CNN. Today, Jim leads one of the largest real estate firms in the country with over $1 billion in sales volume a year, with over 130 active brokers. Like I said, this is a jam-packed episode full of actionable tips you can literally use in your business today. So without further ado, here's my chat with Jim Remley. Jim, thank you so much for joining me on the Top Agent Podcast. Really excited for you to be here.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Awesome. So I really want to provide our audience with a lot of actionable tips and advice in this episode. So there's a lot I want to dive into, but can you kick us off by just telling us a bit about you, your background, and what you're up to today?
Sure. So I'm a 30-year real estate veteran. I always tell agents, don't let that scare you. I'm still out managing a company and working with agents every single day. So I got in the business when I was 19. And so I'm always excited to see young people get in the business because I think it's a great industry. But after a couple of years in the business, I got listed in the top 1% of agents nationwide. I listed 150 properties in one 12-month period. From there, I opened my first company at 23, my first real estate firm. Grew that to 17 offices. And then in 2006, I sold my interest and I started teaching for the National Association of REALTORS. So taught with them for also during my ownership, but about 10 years total with NAR. Wrote a few books, and then I got to actually come down and run a real estate company in Southern Oregon. So today I run a company in Southern Oregon. I'm also a speaker as well, but our company has 160. All of our agents are called brokers in Oregon, so we're 160 brokers on track to do $1 billion in sales this year. We are we're what's called a Real Trends Top 500 company, so we're one of the top 500 companies in America. So that's who I am in a nutshell.
Wow, that's amazing! Quite the resume there. Do you also do some coaching as well?
Yeah. So I have a coaching platform called erealestatecoach.com. So what happened is I train all my agents, of course, in my company, and we have one of the highest average agent production in the state of Oregon for sure, and one of the highest in the nation. So people always came to me about coaching. I want in. So instead of repeating myself a lot, I recorded it all and I created an on-demand coaching. Kind of think of it as like the Netflix of coaching a little bit. So they can come on and they can, if they just need like an a la carte and they want for sell by owner coaching or open house coaching or business to business or sphere of influence, we have mastery classes on all those topics and a ton more. Or they can sign up for what we call the Path, which is our weekly coaching platform. And so that's just fresh, new, exciting content that flows to them every week. And it's been very successful. We have thousands of people that have taken advantage of it across the country. So that's my coaching platform as well. And I speak. I go out and talk to people.
That's incredible. So, like, what takes up most of your day, you think? Is it the coaching or the real estate side of things?
It's probably about 50-50 split. I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of training in my own company. Um, we're a big, busy company too. So I'm definitely helping agents through transactions, helping them with listing. It's kind of strategy, talking about a lead generation, of course, is a massive part of our business. And so I'm always coaching people on lead generation and systems. We have some of the biggest, most successful, I wouldn't say biggest, but most successful teams in the country that work for my company. So we've got several what we call top 1%. They're in the top 1% of the nation. We've got a couple of teams in our company that are on the top 250 teams in America. There's just a lot of stuff happening, a lot of plates in the air, if you will, all the time.
That's amazing. Lead generation is something I do want to get into as well.
Sure.
But, given the amount of agents you've coached, probably, have you reached 1,000 maybe?
Oh yeah, thousands for sure. Over 30 years, you know.
Nice. So what would you say are some of the most common struggles or challenges that you see agents face today? And what are your suggestions or recommendations to overcome those challenges?
Well, it depends on where you're at in your career, but definitely for most agents, lead generation is the cornerstone of the challenge, right? So there's this especially for new agents is kind of what do I do every day? How do I approach my day? And I always tell brand new agents when they're starting the industry, I say, well, you need to look at it like you're a doctor and you just got your medical license, right? And what you're going to do as a doctor is you're going to go in and you're going to work probably as an intern in the hospital for 2 or 3 years to kind of get your sea legs. And during that time, you're going to be working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And a lot of that time is learning and learning the craft of business. But then after that 2 or 3 years of internship, the good news is that you'll build a base of patients, so to speak, and you'll create your own practice. And then I say, the goal for me with every agent that I coach is that within 2 to 3 years of my coaching, I want you to be 80, 90, 95% referral based so that I don't want you door knocking 5 years from now. I don't want you cold calling 10 years from now. That would be like an Armageddon scenario. I never want you doing that. But in the beginning, if you haven't done this and you've been in the business 10 years, you might have to do it for 2 or 3 years to get your business and your foundation under you. And I always point out, you never probably in your community, you never have a surgeon cold calling. You never have the top attorney cold calling you or knocking on your door. And it's the same is true for the top real estate agents. The top 10% of the agents making some of the money in our industry have moved past all the typical lead generation things that you see happening with, the first tier agents. But what happens with a lot of first tier agents is they want to skip. They want to skip from starting point to being a 6-figure agent without doing the work in the middle. And you got to do the work. You got to be the intern. And so that's first and foremost is really making a time commitment to your business.
Yeah, I love that analogy with surgeons and lawyers. It's a great way to think about it. You got to hold yourself to a higher standard. I mean, I've never personally gone a cold call from a surgeon or lawyer ever.
Never happened. So. I always recommend what I call the 4-1-1-1 with my agents. And it's kind of my baseline, like what I say, listen, if you're not doing this, we have nothing to talk about. You've got to be doing this as like your baseline. And the 4-1-1-1-1 is this. It means you have to spend at least 1 hour of uninterrupted time prospecting every day. And there's a million ways to prospect. We can dive into a few of those today. And then the other one, the second one is that during that hour of prospecting, my goal is to set one appointment, whether it's with a buyer or seller, or it could just be a networking appointment. Like I'm going to go to lunch, coffee, dinner, drinks with someone. And the third one is that I'm going to be actually, because I'm setting these appointments every single day, I'm going to be going on one appointment a day. So I set one a day and I go on one appointment a day. And the fourth one, which is the most common one to miss for all agents, including experienced agents, is to be adding one person a day to my sphere of influence. And that adding a one person a day to my sphere of influence is the essential kind of key metric for our entire industry and our entire business. And people say, Jim, why do you think that's so important? Well, why is that such a big deal? And here's the reason. If I start today, if somebody dropped me in a city I've never been to, let's say Toronto, and I was going to say, okay, how am I going to build my business from like ground zero? I could create 22 transactions this year just by adding one person a day to my sphere of influence. And how I do that and how I know that is that the averages are this: for every 10 people in my sphere of influence, and this has been studied from a million different directions, from the Ninja program that's in the CRS, the Buffini program has studied this, NAR studied this, but for every 10 people in your sphere, you average one closed sale. So there's 220 working days in a year. I add one person a day to my sphere of influence, and then I make contact and I'm connecting with them on a regular basis. Statistically, I'll have 220 people in my day at the end of the year. And from that, with a 10-to-1 ratio, I'll create 22 transactions. If I do nothing else, that's without any other prospecting at all, right? So that's like the base for all my agents when I start with them.
That's amazing. One thing you mentioned there, it's pretty easy to add like one person to your sphere of influence. But what I see as a big challenge, not only in real estate, but any type of business really, is the follow-up process. I think, a lot of companies, yes, realtors as well, do a pretty bad job on following up and being persistent. Is that something you notice as a challenge for realtors as well?
Absolutely. So I have the 3 C's. You have to capture first, and capture means, name, email, address, social media, whatever. So that's capture. Then there's cultivate. You have to cultivate a relationship over a long period of time. And then there's closing, right? Closing them into a transaction or sale, or hopefully a referral. So the 3 C's are essential. But what happens a lot is you have a lot of agents who are really good salesperson. They're really good at capture, but they're terrible at the middle part, the cultivation. And they may be really good at closing, but missing that middle part, the whole business model falls apart. There's 2 great examples of this, really interesting actually, in our industry. There's a company called OpCity that was, I think, started in San Diego a few years ago, and they identified this follow-up problem, right? So what they started doing is they would say to an agent, listen, you're getting leads on your website and things, but you're not following up with them. So just hand it off to us and we'll follow up with it. So they'd call somebody within 5 seconds of a lead coming in on a website, and they had like 25 follow-ups built into their platform. Live operators, English speaking, totally able to really dive into a relationship. We do a live handoff with the agent to make sure it happened. They just sold that company a couple years ago to Realtor.com for like $250 million. And what's interesting, they just filled the gap that they saw. And what OpCity really did is they also kind of modeled what Zillow does. Zillow has a similar thing. They call it their concierge program, where they just don't they just don't hand the lead off to the agent anymore, which they used to do. If you're spending $1,000 or more with Zillow, they require you to use the concierge program, which means that they're cultivating the lead and then doing a live handoff, because they know agents are terrible at cultivation. So you're absolutely right. Cultivation, what we call incubation, is essential in our industry for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much for sharing those tools. I can definitely see a lot of great value from those as well. So sticking with lead generation, and specifically, I guess, the capturing and adding people to your sphere of influence, because that's definitely one of the most common questions we get from our clients every single day is, how can I get more leads, or what can I do to get more business? So, I know there's not a one solution fits all answer here, but I'm sure you get that question a lot as well. So how would you start by answering that? Like, what are some unique ways agents can generate leads or add people to their sphere of influence? So yeah, let's start with that.
Well, there's a lot of different ways. I'll give you a couple I've been talking about recently with agents, especially brand new agents that are like fresh out of the gate, but also experienced agents. And I call it narrowcasting. And we've often heard of farming, neighborhoods and and like going after whole geographic zones. But with narrowcasting, it's a much narrower market. So every agent, even if you're a brand new agent, is probably going to be showing homes every week, right? So you're going to be showing homes, at least, 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 homes a week. And so this gives you a golden opportunity to do what I call narrowcasting. And so I'll give you an example. If I showed a home in a neighborhood today, after I'm done with my showing, I could circle back and then talk to not everybody in the neighborhood because it's too much, but I only want to talk to maybe 5 or 10 max people on either side of that home. And I would just simply say this: hey, I showed your neighbor's home today, and you might point to it. And you know what? The buyers love this neighborhood, but that house just wasn't right for them. I've got a crazy question for you because I'm a realtor, obviously. Would you consider selling your house for the right price? And that question, people, if they're at all remotely thinking about selling, it will capture their attention. And there's a sense of urgency here that you won't get from traditional farming or traditional marketing. And the sense of urgency is that, oh, this person that's at my door just showed that home like today. And this buyer is in the market like now, today. And it's a real buyer. It's not just you knocking on the door asking if you want to sell or not. People kind of discount that, but having that sense of urgency can be very, very powerful. And you can also use that in a couple of different formats too. Another format you can use that for is if I have the listing, it's my listing. I have a listing in a neighborhood and it goes pending. If my listing goes pending and I had other buyers that were interested in that listing, maybe there was multiple offers or I had multiple showings, I could also use the same technique with narrowcasting and just talk to 5 or 10 people on either side of that home and just say, hey, listen, I have this listing next door to you. I'm excited. We got it pending. But the downside is I had 5 or 10 other buyers that were also interested in the neighborhood that the home was shown recently, or we had multiple offers. We got to ask you, would you ever consider selling for the right price? It's a great conversation starter. And then the last thing I'd say is there's also another, even better than both those, is a similar situation. But let's say you wrote an offer on a house and maybe you're in a multiple offer situation and you didn't get it. Your client missed the window. They failed to get it. And that's a great opportunity, going back to those neighbors and saying, hey, my buyer wrote an offer on your neighbor's house, but unfortunately we missed it. We didn't get it. Some other buyer got it. Crazy question. Would you guys consider selling for the right price? By the way, the right price is a really Pandora's box. When people say the right price, they're like, yeah, maybe. What's that mean exactly? It's like an open-ended conversation, and it really starts to get people thinking about the possibility. Statistically, what we used to teach years ago, 15 years ago, was that 1 out of every 20 homeowners was interested in selling. About 5% of the population was interested in selling at any given time. Today, that's changed. It's about 1 in 10 statistically. And the reason we know that is how long people are living in houses has gone up dramatically since the Great Recession. So pre-Great Recession, people stayed in their houses 2 to 6 years. That was the average for decades. And it's measured since 1968. And every 2 to 6 years, people would move on. That 10-year in a house has climbed all the way up to 10 years. And it's not because people love where they're living. It's just people got trapped. They had a foreclosure on their record. Maybe they didn't have a job for long enough. They just kind of got set into this house. And so there's a lot of pent up seller demand. That's why we see such low supply in the market, is there's a lot of people sitting in their house and not happy where they're at. But if somebody unlocked that door with the right conversation, you can have a tremendous opportunity in front of you.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. Thanks so much for sharing that. Narrowcasting, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be rewinding that segment to take some notes. That's pretty great. What about open houses? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I love it. No, it's in fact, I was just going to bring up open houses, so I'm glad you brought that up.
I was just going to say, like, you obviously see a lot of open houses. I've read some stats, and I don't know how true it is, but they say, open houses are pretty ineffective and more beneficial to the actual agent for generating leads as opposed to being effective for selling the actual home. What are your thoughts on open house in general, and how can agents better leverage open houses?
So interesting stats around open houses. The reality of an open house is that, you only sell that house 1 to 5% of the time. So, that means you have to have 99 open houses to sell one, right? Or maybe 5 if you're really good. And so people say to me, Jim, why in the world with those stats would I ever do an open house? And the answer is because it's not about selling the house. it's about lead generation. So here's some interesting stats that are what is exciting about open houses. So 43% of all buyers, 43%, almost half of all buyers will attend at least one open house before they make a buying decision. So if you think about that, every buyer in your marketplace, about half of them will attend an open house. That's a massive opportunity. And it's what's exciting about it is that they're physically going and doing something. They're not doing it behind the keyboard. Behind the keyboard and, all the money we spend trying to attract online leads, which is a whole nother conversation. This is a live person coming to your open house, which you can build rapport and trust with and capture and cultivate and close. So that reason alone is huge, right? But there's even a more exciting stat even behind that. And that is we've actually done a study in my company, and we have found that 72% of the people that come to your open house actually, they come in as buyers, but they're actually sellers in disguise. In other words, they still have to sell a home before they can actually buy the home they're in. And if you really unwind that and you kind of unpack that a little bit, well, you think about yourself, like the last time you bought a house, right? Or the last time you were getting ready to buy a house. You're at home with your spouse, your significant other, and you're not super happy. You're one of these people that have been in the house too long. What's the first thing you do? The first thing you do is you probably Google real estate. You probably start searching online. You also become hyper conscious of open houses. And more than likely, you probably stopped at a few open houses to check them out. So it's like the genesis point. It's like the first step into the market for a lot of people. And so there's this massive opportunity to capture clients at that genesis point. Now, then people will say, well, Jim, I get what happens with me is I'll do an open house and I'll have 10 couples come through and I won't capture a single one of them. My problem isn't traffic, it's capturing people, right? And so there's some techniques that I train agents on with this. And by the way, we do have an open house mastery course that the real estate coach we plug into. But here's my coaching around open houses and capturing people. And it's using the power of curiosity. The power of curiosity is such a fundamental part of sales that people miss. And so you got to ask yourself, if you were walking into an open house, what possible reason could an agent give you that you would give up your personal information? You're not just going to write it down in like an open house registry. Nobody does that. If they do that, they're putting down Mickey Mouse or some fake thing, right? It's not real. So when you put it in that perspective, what would I say yes to? I call that a yesable event. That what you say yes to is what you're curious about the house. So I'll give you some framework for this. So if somebody walks into your open house, what if you, after you built rapport and trust, after you've walked them through the house, what if you said, hey, I got a question for you guys. Obviously, you're interested enough to stop by the house here. My sellers of this house had given me permission to share some information with potential buyers or people that are just interested. That might be interesting for you. One of them is their average utility costs for the last year. Would you be interested in knowing what they paid on utility costs? Because I can text that to you. They've shared it with me. Or I can email that to you. They've shared it with me. And it's like the water, sewer, garbage, the whole thing, the whole picture. Would you be interested in that? Most people are going to say yes. Not all, but most, a lot will say yes. So that's one natural curiosity technique. Another natural curiosity technique is to say, hey guys, even if this house isn't right for you, would you be curious to know what it sells for? I know when I'm looking at houses, especially one I've been in, I'm always curious to know what it eventually sells for. Also, would you like to know if there's a price change or if it goes pending? Would you like to know that? Because I've got a little text service I can just set you up for, and it will keep you alerted on what's happening with this house at any given time. People are going to say, yeah, of course, I'd love to know that. So that's another part of the curiosity factor. Another curiosity factor, which is one of my favorites, is to say, hey, listen, one of the biggest questions buyers ask me when they come through a house is they'll say, how did this seller come up with this price? Which I would ask too if I were you guys walking through this house. So here's something that's kind of interesting. My sellers have allowed me to share with anybody that's interested a copy of the CMA, which is called our comparative market analysis, or competitive market analysis, which will show all the solds in the neighborhood, all the active properties, all the pending properties, and really how the seller came up with price. Would you guys be interested in seeing that? Because I can shoot you a text with a link to that if you're interested. If they say yes to any of these things, I'm at the very least capturing their name and their email address or their phone number, which I'd prefer to have their phone number. One more technique real quickly is the secret listing. And the secret listing is one of the most powerful ways you can, and by the way, you can use multiples of these. You don't have to use one. One doesn't work, go to the next one. That doesn't work, go to the next one. So the secret listing technique is to say, hey, listen, a lot of buyers don't realize this, but the best listings often don't hit the MLS system. Best listings often don't have open houses on them because they're sold before they hit MLS, and they're sold before anybody can do an open house on them. And they're what I call coming soon listings. Would you guys be interested in some unlisted property? When you say that, every single buyer is going to say, yeah. I got a couple things that are coming online soon. If you're open for it, I'd love to just, I can grab your email or your phone number, and I'll just keep in touch with you and let you know what's happening on some coming soon listings coming on the market. Because there's some hot buys that can hit the market at any given time. And I know there's a couple agents in my office that are going to be listing some things in this neighborhood soon. So that's just, I could go on and on and on, but that's some ways to capture information.
That's all amazing stuff. I actually fit into exactly the sort of the seller in disguise. Last home I bought, I felt like you were talking about me, essentially just going to the house yet. But
you're not alone.
That's incredible. You brought up texting, and it's something I heard you talk about in the past, is sort of using texting in marketing. And I'm totally in alignment with your thinking on texting, I think. But I personally think texting right now is what email marketing was about 8 or 10 years ago. So is texting important for agents to consider? And again, what are some actionable strategies that can be used with texting?
Absolutely. Texting is huge. And, the average statistics behind texting is that 90 to 95, depending on the target audience, 90 to 95% of all texts will be read and responded to within 5 minutes of receipt. And then if you compare that to what our penetration levels are with email, which is the best case, like people that aren't really know, like, and trust you, it's like 30% open rate and responses, who knows when. So yeah, definitely texting is huge. So the one thing I always encourage agents to do is, when you're dealing with a client that I would call like a hot client, somebody that you've met recently, maybe at an open house or, in conversation or whatever, however you come in contact with them, begin the relationship not by emailing, but by texting to kind of test that. And if you feel that, keep on that road of texting, because there'll be a much more intimate and faster communication style. And here's the big key is that with an open house, for example, I want to text the people that I met at the open house no longer than 24 hours. I'm not going to wait 48 hours. I'm not going to wait 72 hours to text them. It's going to be within the first 24 hours, maybe even within the same hour I'm leaving the open house, because I want to keep this relationship going. Because you got to think about this with clients that have not yet committed to you. They're kind of like a fish swimming in the marketplace, and somebody is going to hook that fish. It's going to be you, or it's going to be someone else. And you have to put a lure in front of them that's going to be attractive for them to like come towards you, right? And so if you wait, what's going to happen is they may attend another open house, or they may call on a sign, or they may, email someone else about a listing. And that agent may be smart enough and savvy enough to put something in front of them they bite on, that they really are interested in. So I've got to continue this relationship really fast. So how I do that with text is I have to text things that have value. So just texting to say hi, of course, is ridiculous, and you never do that, because this is not a personal relationship; it's a professional relationship. So I have to text things that have value, and I'll give you a couple examples of that. I may text someone and say, "Hey, I just wanted to let you guys know there's a new listing that just hit the market. I previewed it already. I think it's something that might be interesting for you. Do you have some time today to take a look?" That's a classic example of an urgency level text. because there's urgency because it's a brand new listing that just hit the market. Another one would be, hey, I just attended an office meeting. One of my colleagues just pitched a listing that's coming to market soon. Not on the market yet. I wanted you guys to know about it first. Do you have a few minutes today to take a look at it? And other ones can be value related in a different way. For instance, most agents today have an app, that they can promote that's connected to their website or separate from the website, but a real estate app of some kind. And that's another great text is to say, hey, it was great meeting you guys today. As you're shopping for homes, I'm sending you a quick link to my real estate app. If you see something you like, you can look at all the photos and descriptions. And if you see something you like, please give me a call. I'd love to help you guys. So this kind of is a value related, quick pieces of information. But that's kind of on the capture side of it. On the cultivation side of it, I love this concept that an agent shared with me that they're doing, which is a text. It's like a text market snapshot. We'll call it that. It's text market snapshot. So when they're talking to a potential client or somebody that they're meeting or somebody in their sphere of influence, they say, hey, I'm putting together this a text market snapshot. It's 3 bullet points about the market that I send out every week, or it could be every month. Not lengthy, and then it has a link to a video I've recorded about the market. Which, can I add you to my group? And they'll say, sure. And then once you do that, now you send out in bulk to everybody in your database a 3 bullet point market update. And that's going to come from your MLS system. Every MLS system has stats they push out. And you just have 3 quick bullet points and then a link that's going to a video that you posted on social media of yourself, interpreting that data. A lot of agents forget that your interpretation of data is really what people hire us for, right? So that's some ways that we use text at my company and with my coaching students.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Also, I think millennials and, the number of millennials now entering the market. And, I put myself in that boat. I'm way more responsive by text as opposed to someone calling me. Like a lot of the times when I do get a call, I'm not even answering. Like if I'm busy or just don't even feel like talking. But, when I get a text, it's there. I can respond easily. Doesn't take you out of your zone or your flow as much. So, I could totally relate to that.
Right. Something else that we're using text for really quickly, a lead generation technique that a lot of agents haven't really started doing, but it's a great technique that we're training to now is to cold text for sell by owners and cold text expired listings. For exactly the reason you just said, which is that 50% of all sellers today are first-time home sellers, meaning they bought a few years ago and they're selling for the first time. And if you think about demographically who those fit into, demographically, most of those people are going to be millennials because they bought a house and now they're selling for the first time. And if you call a millennial, a lot of times if they don't recognize the number, they don't even answer the phone. They're like, who is this weirdo calling me? Text me, please, right? So if you text the number, though, you drive by and you see it, and then you, instead of calling, you text, and the text is something simple, couple lines. Noticed your sign today as I was driving by. Would you be open to allow me to show the property? I'm a realtor with X. And you'd be surprised at how often people will respond very positively to that. And the same with expired listings. So we've actually created some techniques for that within our coaching platform for doing exactly that. And it's creating amazing results, huge response rate. And it's so painless. And the beauty of it is if you're a busy agent, you can actually offload this to an assistant or a college kid that's working for you or some other team member. And you just say, I want you to text every for sale by on the market. I want you to text every expired on the market. And here's the language to text. And we provide that our coaching platform, exactly what to say and how to say it. But that just creates amazing results. And it's such a great, I would call almost like a growth hack, because you can have somebody else doing it for you. And then when the appointments come in, you just go on the appointment.
I love that. That's awesome. So switching gears a little bit now, at one point, as you mentioned in your intro, you listed over 150 homes in a 12-month period. Is that accurate?
That's right. Yes.
Wow. That's crazy. So, to successfully list that many homes, you obviously have to have a strategy or a formula that helps you execute and ultimately sell the properties you list in a reasonable time frame. So what are some important strategies or tips agents should follow when listing a property?
Number one is I think you have to come in and have a system that you're implementing with every single listing. And every listing is different, but your approach to taking the listing should be the same. That's like back to the doctor analogy. Every surgery is different, but the way they approach the surgery is the same. So we come in and we have a set presentation that we're going through. And the presentation isn't necessarily about them as much as it is about me making sure I cover every single point I need to cover. Because what happens with a lot of agents is they think it's about taking the listing, but it's really not. It's about taking the listing, but taking a saleable listing. So you got to get this listing in line to sell. So I always in my presentation covered 3 Ps. I call it I call it my 3-legged table. And the way I explain it to a seller is I'll say, listen, I just want to take a couple of minutes and kind of explain how I work, if you don't mind. Selling a home is I call it, you got to cover the 3 Ps. I look at it like a 3-legged table. And if one of these things is out of alignment, the table falls over. Your ability to sell the home falls apart. So I want you to sell. And so those 3 Ps are price, product, and promotion. And so I walk them through those 3 Ps during my presentation. And it's absolutely essential. And the other important comment that I start with, and it's been invaluable for me over the years, is I say, I set a personal goal, 100% of the listings that I take. And what that requires me to do is to have a different kind of conversation with sellers than most agents have. Because the reality, marketplace, only about 50% of listings that are taken sell the first time out. And so that's a terrible ratio. I want to sell every single listing I take, but it requires me to have a different kind of conversation. See, I can go 2 ways. I can tell you the truth, or I can tell you what you want to hear. Which would you prefer? And then I pause and let them answer. And they'll always say, I want to hear the truth. And I'll say, are you sure? And then I'll laugh and they'll laugh. And I'll say, great. Because again, that's going to be a different kind of conversation to that. Because it's really a choice between listing the property and selling the property. A lot of people list properties, like I said, but I'm somebody that wants to actually sell your house and get you moved on with your life. And so with that in mind, let's talk about price. Let's talk about product. Let's talk about promotion. And then I walk them down those, that process of really getting into the nitty gritty of what it's going to take to sell. But because they've given me permission to be brutally honest, I've now got the kind of keys to the kingdom. I can now come in and say, now most agents would tell you this, but here's the reality. And I can have a different level of relationship.
Love it. I really want you to talk more about price because, I've heard you talk about this in the past. Sure. So like, why shouldn't agents list a home for that typical like $599, $999 price tag?
That's a great question. So with pricing, we always talk about comparables, like the house next door sold for this. And of course, that's a part of the pricing package when we're talking about price. But I also talk about, with my sellers, search engine pricing and digital pricing. And so what I'll say is, listen, we're going to come up with a range based on the comparables in the area, right? But then we also got to come up with a strategy. So the strategy is different than comparables, right? And so I'll give you an example of this. And that is the way that buyers search for homes has changed dramatically over the last 15 years, 10 years, 5 years. And so most buyers are searching for a home on a portal like on Zillow or Realtor.com or Homes.com. There's many of them out there, or they could be on my website. But when they search on a portal or on an app, what's going to happen is that portal or that app is going to drive them into price ranges. It's kind of like herding cattle. It's going to push them towards some price points. And the way it does is it does it with a sliding scale. Sometimes it's a sliding scale, or it'll be like you pick a price point. And the price point is always going to end in zeros. And so it's going to be like, okay, 200,000, 225, 335, 350, 375. So it's always going to be, it's never going to be, here's what it's never going to be. It's never going to be 299.99. It's never going to be 499.99. So the way to think about search engine pricing is that nines do not exist in search engine pricing, in digital pricing. So here's the mistake that a lot of sellers make. And as you're looking at real estate yourself now, because when I sell your house, you're going to be a buyer again, right? And I'm going to sell your house. And as you're looking at homes, check out how many homes are still listed with nines where agents don't get this logic. But as you're searching for a home, and you're driven towards these price points, let's assume that your home now is worth $392. Okay. If we priced it at $392, you might say to yourself, let's not price it at $392. Let's price it at $399.99. And by doing so, what's going to happen to you is that buyers that are looking between $350 and $400, which are the natural price points, are going to see your home naturally, because that's where the price points are. But every buyer above $400,000 is going to miss your house, right? Because they're not in that price pattern. It would be better for you to, instead of listing at $399.99, to list on the even $400. And the reason is this: you're going to straddle two markets. You're going to be now getting every buyer between $350 and $400, but also every buyer between $400 and $450. And when you say that to a seller, it's like their eyes light up and they're like, oh, that makes total sense. And let me tell you why this is also important, because, and I showed them this in the MLS, there was, 42 sales last month between $350 and $400, and there was 32 sales between $400 and $450. Now I have an opportunity to capture, 70 plus sales, whereas before I would only capture, 30 or 40 sales. And be a part of that mix. So straddling those two markets doubles my potential to have activity. So sellers, eat that up, and it's absolutely true. And when you get to the higher price points, it's actually even more and more important, because the lower price points, prices go down by 25, 50,000. But when you get to the higher price points, which basically is over 500,000 in Zillow and Realtor.com, then the prices go up not by 50 or 25, they go up by $100,000 increments. So it's hugely important that, agents and sellers understand this. So a classic example of this is somebody that's listed at $1,090,000, which is common. They're listed at $1,090,000. They're only going to catch buyers between basically $1 million, and it's probably going to go $1 million to $1,250,000 at that point. You're going to miss every buyer below $1 million. And at $90,000, it makes zero sense to miss that other market below that. So those are the things I strategize with sellers. And I always come back to it. I say, listen, you're in charge. I'll do anything you want to do reasonably. But if you're talking strategy, this is the strategy that works, that will get you the most money for your home. What would you like to do? And just put it to them. They'll either, they'll go one way or another, but at least you've made that, you put it out there.
Yeah, that advice right there, I think, is so powerful. As you were explaining it, I was searching a few search portals, including our own, and you're right, 999 just don't exist. So really, really good advice. What about staging? Do you think staging is important when listing a home?
I do think staging is hugely important. It's part of what the product conversation. So what I'll say to sellers is, one of two things is going to happen when we list your house. And this is what I call the red flag conversation. So buyers will immediately start to come and look at your house. So we put the house in the market. If we get buyers come and look at your house immediately, and we get a steady stream of buyers, that's going to signal to them. That's going to signal to us that we got the price right. People are coming to look at it. But on the flip side, if we put the house on the market and we hear crickets, we get one or two buyers and that's it. That's an indicator that we've missed the mark on price, and we're going to need to revisit it really quickly. And it's not going to be a month. It's going to be like a week later. I'm going to come back to you. We missed the mark. We need to adjust this price. We need to reposition the market. But something else can happen too. And that is we get a lot of showings, but no offers. And the only reason why we'll have a lot of showings, but no offers, is because the price isn't the issue because they're coming to see it. There's something about the house itself that people are not finding attractive. So I tried to head that off right now as we're sitting here listing the house. What I'm going to recommend we do is what we call staging. And there was a recent study done about staging. This is the largest study ever done about staging. 4,200 homes were studied. And of those homes, the 68% that were staged got 9% more money than their counterparts that didn't. So When you say that to a seller, they're like, what? 68% of sellers got 9% more money when they staged their house than those that their counterparts that did. So staging is important. And let me just explain what staging means, because people have a misconception of staging. Staging, in a lot of people's minds, they're thinking about what's happening on TV and what they see on, TV reality shows with regards to real estate. That's a part of it, which is more decorative and moving furniture around. And I'll talk to you about that too. But the number one thing on staging, if you look at the top stagers in the country, is a deep cleaning of the house. Now your house is clean, guys. It looks beautiful. But, it's kind of like when you go to sell a car. What's the first thing you do when you sell a car? You go clean it. You detail it out, right? Because you want top dollar. The same thing with your house. You detail it out. Even my house, I would totally detail out. Now, I can give you an example. I have a couple of super amazing professional cleaners that can come in and totally trick your house out and just make it sparkle. You guys have done a great job. You really don't need to do anything as you're living in this beautiful house. But if you want my advice, this is what I do myself. Would you like some recommendations? And most people will say yes if you frame it that way. It's all in framing. Another thing I'll say to them is, listen, one thing that's going to happen as buyers walk through your house is they're going to want to see themselves living in the house. And part of staging is that we want to depersonalize your house. So one of the most common things is collections that you have and personal photos. So for instance, you have an amazing spoon collection, which I think is really interesting, or a plate collection or whatever, which I think is interesting and fascinating. And I think most people are going to just stop and they're going to appreciate your collection. But as soon as they start appreciating your collection, they stop appreciating your home and they get out of it. They step out of being a home buyer and they start just looking at your photos or your collection. And we don't want them doing that. And I'm going to tell you, 30 years in the business myself, there is never a time when I walk by a photo on a wall of people that I cannot stop and look at the photo. I have to stop and look at it. Every single human being just stops and looks at photos. So when you have photos on the walls, it just takes people out of that zone of buying the house. They stop thinking about putting themselves in the house. And really what we're trying to build is an emotional connection. We want people to emotionally attach to the house. They can't do it if your house is personalized to you. So we depersonalize it. And the best way to think about it is as when you walk into a furniture store. Furniture store is beautiful. It looks great. But it's kind of vanilla. And we want your house to be a little bit vanilla. We want to have great furniture. We want it to be sparkling clean, but we want to be personalized. So that's a little bit of what I talk about when I talk about staging with people. And it's effective.
Very true. Very true. Again, I feel like I can dive into these 3 Ps: price, product, promotion, forever here. But you touched on something, and you talk about framing. And at the end of the day, agents are still in the sales business, and obviously, sales encompasses so many different things. But how important is language and sort of framing the story and the content around a home you're listing?
I think language is the language of sales is so important, because if we don't know how to influence another person, then the problem is that when you walk into a room with 2 people, one person is going to influence the other person. It's just a natural human nature, right? And so very, very often what happens is an agent comes into a house to list it, just to give you an example of this. And they have an idea. They have a gut price. And by the way, our gut price is 99% of the time accurate. The reason it's accurate is because we show homes every day. When we walk into a house, we know what's going to sell for. Most of the time, we're very, very accurate because this is our job. But what happens is if the seller in the house is more powerful and they influence you, you can walk out of that house with an overpriced listing because you allowed them to influence you. You have to be the influencer, and the way you influence people is with language. And it's not manipulation. It's more about how you are telling your story and how convincing you are with your story. And there's some I wouldn't call secrets, but some tactics, some strategy behind that can really help you. One of them is, you heard me say it with the staging conversation, which is that the largest study of staging ever done was done last year, 4,200 homes. And they found that, 68% of the homes that were staged got 9% more money or greater. When I can speak to statistics like that, it elevates me in the minds of the client, and they start to think of me as the expert. You have to be the expert in the room. And the way that you're the expert in the room is by being able to talk about statistical data and not try to win only on personality. What happens with most agents is that they try to win on personality alone. And the problem with that is that most people will like you, yes, but liking you is not enough. You have to get a saleable listing. So getting that listing it's more than that. I've got to get something I can sell. A great example of that when we get to the staging conversation and the language of sales is smokers in a house. Sometimes you're going to have smokers in a house. And there was a study done by Realtor.com of homes that had been smoked in. And they found that homes that have been smoked on average got 20 to 29% less for the house than homes that had not been smoked in. And so you might say, gosh, how would I frame that conversation to a seller and convince a smoker that they shouldn't smoke in their house? And you talk about the language of sales and influence. This is a really hard conversation. So the way I would frame that up is I'd say, hey, listen, I know you guys smoke in the house. Totally respect, your decision to do that. I have a lot of family members that smoke. Totally understand, right? But when we're talking about selling your house, I want to give you some information of that might influence, where you're at with that in terms of just during the marketing time of selling your house. Because on average, Realtor.com did a study of this, and they found that homes that were smoked in received 20 to 29% less than homes that were not smoked in. So on your price point, $300,000, 20% at the low range is a $60,000 swing in value. I don't want you guys to take a $60,000 hit on your price. So can I give you some suggestions of what you can do? And I'm not asking you to quit smoking. And when you frame it that way, people will be like, okay, well, what do you got? What are you going to tell me? Right. And that's a lot to what you're talking about is the language, how you're doing it. And some people, Jim, how do you sound natural when you're saying it? How do I get to that level of sounding natural? And there's a technique that I would recommend. And that is I have to first memorize scripts. People hate to memorize things, but it's a fact of nature that if we're going to be in sales, we've got to memorize things. So memorization is key. And I always say, you think a doctor memorizes something? Of course. Do accountants memorize things? Of course. Do attorneys memorize things? Of course. If we want to be paid like one of these high-level professionals, we have to memorize things. But then we move beyond memorization and we move to internalization. That's like a football player or soccer player or baseball player. They know their ball so well. They don't have to think about holding it. They don't have to think about throwing it. They just know it. They know it. It's a tennis player with a racket. They know it inside out, forward, backward. And then you can move up. Once you've internalized all that dialogue, all that language, you can move up to personalization. Personalization means I can personalize it to the situation I'm in. So for a football player, they can throw that ball any place on the field. For a salesperson, no matter what that seller is saying to you or how they're reacting to you, because I know my language of sales, I can react to them in a way that will influence them to make the right decision. So I know that was a lot to a small question.
No, that's incredible. I think it's so true. I think so many people overlook how important the language we use with influencing people. So yeah, great advice.
Let me give you one tip for your agents that actually an actionable item with language. And I picked this up from a book called Influence. And I think the guy's last name is Cardini. If you look it up, you can buy the book, listen to it on Audible. But he talks about this study that was done about using the words, would you like versus would it be okay? So a classic example of this, you're at an open house, somebody walks in and you say, hey, would you like to have me send you some information by email about this house after the open house or something along those lines? 90% of the time people will say no to the words, would you like? 90% of the time. But flip this over and say, would it be okay? And 90% of the time they will say yes. So if somebody walks in your open house and you say, hey, would it be okay if I sent you some information about this property after the open house? 90% of the time people say yes to that. For whatever crazy psychological reason, that's just the language of sales, right? That's why we have to be masters of our profession. We have to learn how to play this game. And it's not a game, but it is something that we have to be working on constantly. If athletes go back to spring training every year, the best athletes in the world train and they get trained and they have coaches and they pay for training and they do every single thing they can to be at the top of their game. So listening to podcasts like this, being subscribed to newsletters, getting involved with things like Real Estate Coach. This is how you learn to do your job better.
Couldn't agree more. That's great advice. I'm going to add that book as well in the show notes. Influence. That's actually on my reading list. Heard a lot of great things. So the last thing I want to touch on these 3 Ps. You spoke about price, product. Touch on promotion. So, typically you see a realtor list a home, they post it on their MLS, syndicates to all the sites. They might share it on social media, but how should successful agents be promoting their listings?
Well, promotion is interesting because promotion today is different than it was years ago. Years ago, we would focus a lot on print marketing, and print marketing is essentially dead, right? So only 1% of sales come from a direct result of print marketing. And what happens with print marketing is that, in effect, it's just is like a huge waste of time, effort, and money for most of us. That not to say that we don't do any print marketing in my company, because I do some, but it's very tactical. In marketing listings, I think the best thing that we can be doing is making sure that our promotion is selling something that other agents always forget. And that is what you're really selling when you're selling a home is you're selling not the home itself, but the lifestyle. So you're selling the lifestyle the home provides someone. It's the same reason why we buy a car. We don't buy a car because, that it gets us from A to B. Because if that were true, we would just buy the cheapest thing we can get. We're all going from A to B, but it's how we get there that matters, right? So it's what you're driving, because what you're driving is a reflection of who you are as a person, right? Some people drive Maseratis, some people drive trucks, some people drive vans. The same is true in housing. Price plays a part in it, but the reality is I buy a house because of the way it makes me feel and the lifestyle I think I will enjoy if I live there. So when you're building your promotion plan, you need to focus really intently on what am I selling here in terms of lifestyle, then build your marketing pieces around that. Some examples of that I've had recently, some of my agents are doing lifestyle photos. And lifestyle photos are a different way of marketing a house. So normally you see a house, people take pictures of the house, the granite, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the kitchens and sinks and all that thing. But some agents are doing it now with lifestyle photos, is they have an actor or actress in the photo, so that they're interacting and enjoying the lifestyle that someone would have if they were in the home. I just saw an example of this, of a home theater room. Instead of having an empty home theater room, they had a picture of the family with popcorn and candy and Coke and all watching the big screen. And I think they had like a Disney movie on. And that imagery is completely different. You're now selling a story. You're selling a lifestyle of what someone can enjoy. You're selling a pool, or are you selling the barbecue? What are you selling? So this kind of boils down to an old school marketing technique, but it's an important one to remember, which we often forget, is we're not selling the feature. We're not selling the 3 bedrooms or the 4 bedrooms. We're selling the benefits of the feature. So if I have a deck, what can I do on that deck? If I have a 3-car garage, what can I do with that 3-car garage? Those are the things that people forget when they're talking about promotion, which is so essential. And when it comes to ad writing, which we still do ad writing, and actually ad writing today is actually more important, even though we don't do print marketing anymore, we still do copywriting. And that's what basically in most cases, the first 160 characters of any marketing remarks that you write for your listing are going to be what shows up when somebody gets this listing sent to them in an email feed. So let's say they're signed up on Realtor.com, Zillow, your website, and the new listing is taken, matches their criteria. It gets emailed to them because it matches their criteria. That first 160 characters is probably what they're going to read right out of the gate. Before they say read more, click here to see more. And so if you screw up that first 160 characters, you've blown your promotion chance with them. So what do I say in that first 160 characters? Here's something to remember. And what we've forgotten as an industry is that headlines are read 10 times more than the body of any advertisement, 10 times more. So you need a headline, which is basically your first sentence, which should be short, sweet, but exciting. You should have that as the first line in every single ad that you write. That way, when people read that first headline, it's not going to start off with, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1 car garage, large yacht, close to the, city, whatever. The most boring thing on earth. Instead, it's going to be a headline, come enjoy the skyline in this brand new condo overlooking the river. Now you got my attention, right? Now I want to look at this. Now I'm going to say, read more. So those are some important things too. Really quickly, on promotion too, I could talk all day about this, is you want to rejection proof your marketing too. What I mean by rejection proofing marketing is that buyers are elimination machines. Whether you realize it or not, when you become a home buyer, you intuitively know that there are probably 1,000 homes in the market I could look at. And then if you're in a big market like Toronto or, big city, it could be 10,000 homes that are available in the marketplace. So psychologically, intuitively, you got to eliminate a lot of properties. So when you pull up your Google search or your Zillow search or your Realtor.com search, what you do is you quickly say, this won't work, this won't work, this won't work. You're not reading these ads to accept them. You're reading these ads to reject them. So what you need to do as a copywriter now, as a marketing specialist, is you need to say, how can I rejection proof my ad to some degree? So I'm going to give you things that people reject on. Remember, people buy homes emotionally. They eliminate homes logically. So logical means I have kids and I need a 4-bedroom house. I need 2 bathrooms. I need it in this school district. I need a large yard. Now, every time I see a 3-bedroom house with 1.5 baths in the wrong school district, that's out of contention. I'm going to eliminate it. So I have to start writing my ads much on the amenity list and write that ad more based on the lifestyle. So it is an art form for sure. And a lot of agents struggle with ad writing, but really take some time and really think through what you're appealing to, making sure that you're writing things that are just going to be immediately rejected out of hand and that really appeal to people's sense of what they can do with the home, not just make it all about the house itself.
I love it. So much important information in there. Ad copy, I totally agree. Very important skill set in any business, especially real estate. But I especially love the idea of lifestyle photos and using actors or actresses like that. That's almost genius. I mean, any buyer, including myself, if I was browsing through listings and I saw photos with people in there, I would automatically stop, and that's a listing I would remember and would always be on top of mind. So that's some great advice. Switching gears again a little bit, I'm curious to get your opinion on this. So, I want to talk about relationships in real estate. With a lot of technologies and sort of apps coming out, you get two sides to the argument. On one side, people think real estate can really get disrupted and be streamlined totally online and eliminate the face-to-face. And on the other side, you have agents who think the personal relationship side of real estate will never go away. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, we're definitely in this world. I just did a program on this, and we are having disruption in the industry for sure at different levels. And I read an article by David Bryan at MIT Review, and he talked about this specific issue. And it's the reality that in our world, we're seeing apps and websites and really our whole society being driven towards what I call a frictionless society. And frictionless means that systems are being built and designed for less and less and less human interaction. We don't quite realize it, but it's happening all the time. A good example is Uber. Before, I'm old enough to remember when we had to get in a cab and actually talk to the cab driver and tell them where we're going and have conversation. But today with Uber, you literally do not have to have a conversation with the driver. You just plug in where you're going, open the car door, get in. They'll drive you where and you get out. You don't have to pay them. You don't have to interact with him or her at all. That's an example of less human interaction. Another one is for my wife and I. We've started using HelloFresh and some of these systems that will send you food and deliver your house, and then you make it at home. But now we don't have to go to a restaurant if we don't want to. We don't have to go grocery shopping because it's all assembled for us. We just cook it at the house. Self-checkout's another example. There's just a ton of examples in our industry and in our world where less and less human interaction is happening, which is happening in real estate too. So the thought process behind this is there are aspects to this that do make the real estate industry easier. For instance, allow buyers being able to search and find their own homes and then deliver their homes that they want to see to you. Definitely makes our life easier as realtors. There's new systems out there that are going to be rolling out soon across the country, across the world, where you're going to be able to access homes without a realtor present, with the seller's permission, of course. There's a system out there called Tour right now, which basically, kind of like Airbnb, you plug in all your personal information, you copy your driver's license, all that stuff. And then if there's a vacant house and the sellers agree to it, the agent can send you a link so you can actually walk up to the lockbox and open the lockbox yourself, walk to the house yourself, and then leave and put the key back in yourself without having an agent present. And agents kind of run in fear of this stuff, but this is just the evolution of our industry. What people actually hire us for is interpretation of information, which is always going to come down to a conversation between two human beings. And it's going to come down to having a trusted advisor. And people always want a trusted advisor. A new study from CAR, California Association of REALTORS, and Real Trends found that 69% of consumers, when they're going to hire a real estate agent, still want a referral from someone that they trust, which goes back to the personal relationship. People want someone that's trusted. And it's the same thing of us. A lot of us use like WebMD. I do this all the time. You go on WebMD and you're like, okay, this is a system that can help me diagnose what's wrong with me. But 90% of the time you go on WebMD, you're dying of something if you look at that system. I mean, it's wrong, right? It interprets your data wrong, most of the time, which is why we still go to the The same will be true for us. As what I say to agents is this: how do we combat this? The way you combat it and you deal with it is that every piece of marketing that you're doing, every social media ad that you do, every system you develop, every marketing postcard you send out, everything you're doing has one goal and one goal only. It's to drive people to have a human connection with you. That's a face-to-face or phone-to-face conversation with you. You want to drive people back to conversation. And when you do so, you remove us from becoming a commodity, because there is a danger in us becoming commoditized, meaning that we're just one of the thousands of agents that can do a job for them. And we want to not do that. We want to be the person that, like, yeah, there's thousands of agents, but this agent really knows her stuff. This agent really understands what my needs are. This agent really knows how to take care of me. And I trust them with the largest financial asset of my life. And how do you get there? You get there through consistent communication with your entire database. The most valuable asset you have is your database. And this boils down to one thing. 12 times a year, you need to be having interaction with your database. Now, I know you can't call your entire database 9 to 12 times a year. But you can certainly call them 1 to 2 times a year. And you can send them a personal note 1 time a year. And you can invite them to client appreciation events where they see and interact with you. And there's just a lot of things. They get a mailing from you once a quarter. There's a lot of things we can be doing to have human interaction. And I'm just going to end this a little with one thing that I've noticed among top producers in my company. I have a guy, Doug Morris, $60 million in business. JJ Kramer, $60 million in business. Patty Million, $50 million. Just huge production numbers. But when they're talking about their clients, I never hear the word client out of their mouth. They always say my friends. Their clients are their friends, and they always say friends. It's because they look at this relationship not transactionally, but relationally. And that's what we have to do. Move away from being transactionally minded and move towards being relationally minded. That this isn't just one deal. This is a lifetime client. By the way, Inman News did a study of this a few years ago, and they found that the average lifetime value of each of your clients back then was about $88,000. It's got to be closer to $100,000 now. When you put that into perspective, every single person in your database has the potential to be worth $100,000 to you if you treat them relationally. So when you put it in perspective like that and you say, wow, if I really work hard on these relationships, these things do have value, your mind kind of switches and you totally change gears.
I love it. Yeah. A lot of great insights, great advice there for sure. It's funny. You're one of the few agents I've ever spoken to who are just seem to be very open and willing to share actual, like, real value in terms of actionable advice for free, essentially. And I think that's such an important part of marketing in general. Nowadays you have to be very mindful of human behavior, which is something I talk about a lot, and being thoughtful on how to capture someone's attention for a bit of time with all this nonstop information and feeds people are consuming. And I think the best way to do that is to actually provide value to people for free. So, what are your thoughts on that? And how can agents do a better job with providing value to their leads, prospects, and clients?
I think that's very true. What's interesting kind of along those lines is that I just saw a study that 28% of millennials will only do business with someone that has been referred to them by somebody they like and trust. And how is that trust developed? Trust is developed by being authentic with people. There's this trend in our industry if you see on Instagram and on Facebook, of everyone wanting to be an influencer, and it's all these perfect photos, and you wonder, these people must have professional photographers like running around behind them, taking these amazing shots of them constantly all the time. It's crazy when you look at this, but it's all kind of surfacey. It's very surface. It's very shallow. No depth behind this at all. And people really deep, meaningful relationships with people that they trust. And I do agree. When you're open and honest, and the really, really, really important part of this is being authentic. If people see you are an authentic person who truly cares about other people, and there's no cost attached, there's no agenda attached. It's just you're helping, you're willing to help, you're willing to do what it takes. You're not worried about the commission. You're more worried about the relationship. Then that will just elevate you to another level where people will respect who you are and what you do. And this is true on social media as well. And a lot of people kind of present an edited version of themselves to the world. Edited version, they think they're trying to be perfect, but people don't want perfection. What people want is real people. They want authenticity, and they want to see who you really are as a human being. And by doing so, you open yourself up. And you got to say, why don't I do that? Why not? Why aren't I the unedited version of myself on social media or with my clients? And the reason is we're afraid of rejection. We're afraid that they're going to reject us and say, oh, I don't like this person. But that is so far from the truth. What people actually want is they want to see the real you, because they're going to say, oh, I can relate to them on such a more deeper level than that. So when it comes to real estate, and you say, how do I apply this to real estate? First of all, look at what you're presenting and say, is this really who I am? And then kind of align your brand along that. And then say to yourself, what can I be giving to people that's not the same as everybody else? That's going to be different and unique. And the best, most powerful way we can do that today is with video. So video is such a powerful tool that can present who you are as a person and your personality within split seconds. Within just a couple seconds, people get a sense of who you are. And there's been whole studies about thin slicing and how fast the human brain can analyze people. And it's almost dead on accurate. It's amazing how fast somebody can look at somebody and kind of know who that person is. And we need to open ourselves up to that. And the reason agents don't do it, again, is they're afraid of the critique. They're afraid of the criticism. But examples of that I've seen agents doing in my own market is they will do just a once a month review of the market and say, hey, I just want to give you a quick market update. Now, yes, you could do this in print. Yes, you could do this in infographic. And yes, that would look, nice. But you presenting, hey, here's what's happening with the market. Here's what I think's going on. We don't have a crystal ball. Here's what I think where we're headed. People are really resonate with that. And it's super powerful. A lot of my agents use what's called BombBomb, which is a email platform where you can send video through email. And that's really, really powerful. By the way, emails, again, not a high penetration rate, but when there's a video attached, the penetration rate goes way higher. People look at those because they like to see you. They want to see you interacting. So video, interpretation of information, also evergreen videos, super powerful. So what's an evergreen video? An evergreen video is a video I shoot that will not have a expiration date. Like the stats videos, they're going to be good for about a month and then they're kind of expired, right? It's like perishable. But at an evergreen video, I might shoot a video and say, hey, here's 10 things that I've noticed walking through homes over the last 12 months that I think buyers notice the most. And I think you guys should be aware of it if you're ever selling or getting ready to sell. Let me share what those are. And then you list the 10 things. But that will be, evergreen. You can use that forever. You could also put that into your listing presentation or send that as an email to your database. There's so many ways to use it. And imagine you stacking up now. If you commit to yourself and say, hey, I'm going to do one video a week, not 10, not 5, not one a day, just one a week, where it's either evergreen or perishable, doesn't matter. But one a week, over a year period, you're going to have 52 videos stacked up. If half of them are non-perishable, man, that's great. Now you have 25, 30 different videos that all reflect your personality, that give really valuable content to your database. And imagine all the places you could stack those up. You could put them on YouTube, on your website, on social media. There's so many places to put those things. And here's the interesting thing and a differentiation point. 94% of agents, this is a study that's been done, refuse to do video. 94% of agents today refuse to do video. So that means you've eliminated 94% of your competition right out of the gate. So you're only dealing with 6%. Is a number all of us can manage. So that's a couple of ways you can build value, build relationships, and be more authentic with your group.
You definitely hit the nail on the head there. So many good points. I mean, one, being authentic, I think is super important. Video and evergreen stuff. I mean, people don't realize, put out an evergreen video, you share it on social media, but you can continuously recycle that content because, when you post it on like Facebook, let's just say, not everyone on your contact list can be seeing that video. So when you recycle it every few months, you're going to constantly get new eyeballs on it. So, a lot of good advice there. Thanks so much. Jim, we definitely went over our time limit here. I feel we can easily continue going for hours, but do want to be mindful of your time. I do wrap up each interview with what I call the top 3. You ready?
Yep, let's do it.
All right. Number 1, your top real estate or business book?
Top real estate or business book?
Feel free to self-promote, by the way. I know you wrote a couple books, so.
Yeah, I won't self-promote, but you can look. Your audience can look me up on all the platforms, Barnes and Noble and Amazon if they want. But a book that I didn't write, I would say, Good to Great by Jim Collins is a great book. The 4-Hour Work Week is a great book. Timothy Ferriss, I love that book. It was a life-changing book for me. Awaken the Giant Within. Tony Robbins, it's an older book, but it's a great book, and it really gets to some foundational issues that can be impacting the reasons why you're not succeeding at the level you need to be succeeding at. So those 3 books for you.
Awesome. Thank you. Number 2, your top vacation spot.
Top vacation spot. Ooh, this is a good one. My wife and I just went back to Maui. Maui's always fun, but I'll tell you, we love Cabo, San Lucas. But Cabo San Lucas has 2 different areas. So San Jose del Cabo. So look that up. Your audience will love it.
Nice. Awesome. And finally, if you can go back, what do you wish your 20-year-old self knew?
What did my 20-year-old self know? I wish I would have understood, because I was in real estate at that point, the power of maintaining and building my database from day one. I didn't learn that until probably 5 years in the business. So I think it's the most overlooked aspect of our business is really, having a CRM and building your database and really being religious about your database.
Awesome. And Jim, if people wanted to reach out or find you, where's the best place to do so?
Best place to go is erealestatecoach.com. So erealestatecoach.com is the best place to find me.
Perfect. I'll add that in the notes as well. Jim, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Would love to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Let's do it again. Have a great time. Thank you.
All right, Jim. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Top Agent Podcast by Web for Realty. By the way, we're providing exclusive promos to our listeners. Visit webforrealty.com/topagent and get your first month on us. That's webforrealty.com/topagent to get your first month of service completely free. Until next time, over and out. Peace.